Good day, everyone. Today, we're going to discuss to you about PD 1096, which is the National Building Code of the Philippines. To start off, we have Stephanie Magno to tell you about Section 1.
So today we will talk about the Presidential Decree number 1096, which is the adopting National Building Code of the Philippines, thereby revising Republic Act number 6541 or RA number 6541. So for this presidential decree, it is considering the country's accelerating economic and physical development coupled with urbanization and population growth. So by this, it involves the modern technical knowledge on building design, construction, use, occupancy, maintenance, and whereas while there is a Republic Act number 6541 entitled An Act to Ordain and Institute a National Building Code of the Philippines, the same does not conform with the developmental goals and infrastructure program of the government and does not adequately provide for all the technological requirements of buildings and structures. So, in terms of up-to-date design and construction standards and criteria, the formulation of new national building code, it desires and policies of the government to avail of and harness the technical expertise and professional know-how to man not only in the public but in the private sectors as well. So, as for Ferdinand E. Marcos, the President of the Philippines, he there hereby ordered and decreed the revision of Republic Act number 6541 to read as follows. So for the chapter 1, the general provisions, section 1, the title, so this decree shall be known as the National Building Code of the Philippines and shall hereinafter be referred to as the Code. Section 102, the Declaration of Policy, it is hereby declared to be the policy of the state to safeguard life, health, property, and public welfare, consistent with the principles of sound and environmental management and control. So, to this end, make it the purpose of this code to provide for all buildings and structures a framework of minimum standards and requirements to regulate and control their location, site, design, quality materials, construction, use of occupancy, and maintenance. So, in general, in general provisions, section 103, scope and application, for A, the provisions of this code shall apply to the design, location, sitting, construction, alteration, repair, conversion, use, occupancy, maintenance, moving, demolition of, and addition to public and private buildings and structures. So these terms will be defined later. For B, building or structures constructed before the approval of this code shall not be affected thereby except when alterations, additions, conversions, or repairs are to be made. So, in section 104, there are general building requirements. For A, B, and C, the summary of this should the number one requirement for building for for buildings is to ensure the quality and safe construction of the environment. So we should observe the adequate environmental safeguards and maintain the safe and sanitary and good condition of our structures and buildings. So section 105, the site requirements, the land or site upon which will be constructed any building or structure or any ancillary or auxiliary facility thereto shall be sanitary, hygienic, and, or, and safe. So in this case of sites and buildings intended for use as human habitation or abode, the same shall be at safe distance as determined by competent authorities. So these are the rules that have been set. For example, in the national highways, so there's offset for for the road and the buildings constructed for the buildings constructed. So any other buildings considered to be potential source of fire and explosion. So here is the definitions under section 106. So the first is addition. Any new construction which increases the height and or floor area of existing buildings or structures. So addition um, normally occurs in the buildings or structures that um, open for extension. So if ever the owner of the building wants an extension, so the term for that is addition. So there will be an additional floor area or there's an increase of height of the building or structure. Second, agency of the government refers to any of the various units of the government, including the department, bureau, office, instrumentality, or government-owned or controlled corporation. Third, alteration works in buildings, structures involving changes in materials used, partitioning, location, size of openings, structural parts, existing utilities, and equipment, but does not increase the building height or any other floor area. So for the alteration is this typically or normally occurs in ongoing construction buildings or structures that is that have revisions on their floor plans. For example, there's a change in the dimension of the window of the door, or there will be another room created, but then the area of the floor or the floor area is not changed. Only the partitions, the openings, and the other parts of the structure. So fourth, application forms. A pre-formatted prescribed application form duly accomplished and notarized by the respective design professional with validation matrices related to other building rules and regulations. Applicant permittee, any person, firm, partnership, corporation, head of government or private institution, organization of any character playing for the issuance of permits or certificates. So the applicant permit or permittee is us or any other firms or partnerships or corporations. So for the building official, the executive officer of OBO appointed by the secretary. So building permit, the document issued by the OBO to an owner applicant to proceed with the construction, installation, addition, and other work activity for a specific building or structure. For the code, the meaning of the code is defined as PD 1096 or also known as the National Building Code of the Philippines. For construction, all on-site work done in the site preparation, excavation, and other activities or machineries and equipment of buildings and structures. For conversion, a change in the use of occupancy of buildings, structures, or any portion thereof which has different requirements. So for this conversion is that if ever not you have a residential house and you want to turn it into a commercial one, so you need to apply or you need to get a permit which to have that residential house turned into a commercial building. So since having a residential house requires a different requirement or papers than acquiring the commercial one. Demolition, the systematic dismantling or destruction of a building structure in whole or in part. Department, the Department of Public Works and Highways. For the executive director, the executive officer or head of the NBCDO or National Building Code Development Office. So for moving, the transfer of building structures or portions thereof from original location or position to another, either within the same lot or to a different one. the office of the building official, so that's the meaning of OBO, the office authorized to ensure the provisions of the code and its IRR in the field as well as their enforcement of orders and decisions made pursuant thereto. For the referral codes, the applicable provisions of the various agencies and technical professional codes. For renovation, any physical change on building structures to increase the value quality and to improve the aesthetic. For repair, remedial work done on any damaged or deteriorated portions. So for the difference of renovate and repair is that renovate is to renew, to revamp something to make it new again, while repair is to restore to good working order or fix or improve damaged condition. So that's their difference. Secretary, head of office executive officer of DPWH, and for staff, the personnel of the National Building Code Development Office. So that's for the general provisions under chapter 1. So now we will proceed to chapter 2 by Adele May Aron.
For chapter 2, okay, for chapter 2, which is administration and enforcement, we have, there are at least 16 sections, namely Section 1, Responsibility and Administration of Enforcement, Section 2, Technical Staff, Section 3, General Powers and Functions of the Secretary, Section 4, Professional and Technical Assistance, Section 5, Building Officials, Section 206, Qualifications of Building Officials, 207, Duties of the Building Officials, Section 208, Fees, Section 209, Exemption, Section 210, Use of Income from Fees, and next is Implementing Rules and Regulations, 212, Administrative Fines, 213, Penal Provisions, 214, Dangerous and Ruinous Buildings or Structures, 215, Abatement of Dangerous Buildings, and last is 216, Other Remedies. We will start off with Section 201, which is Responsibility for Administration and Enforcement. So here, the administration and enforcement of the provisions of the code, including the impositions of penalties for administrative violations thereof, is hereby vested in the Secretary. So like what Stephanie said in the other video, Secretary is the head or the chief of the DPWH. Next is Section 202, Technical Staff. So here, there are 4 functions of the staff. One is assist the secretary in the administration. 2, review, evaluate, and take final action on various technical and legal problems. 3, conduct seminars or workshops on the code. And 4, undertake such other duties and tasks as may be assigned by the secretary from time to time. So those staff are what are the people who help the secretary in performing the duties. So Section 203, General Powers and Functions of the Secretary. So here we have 4, formulate policies, plans, standards, and guidelines on building designs. 2, issue and promulgate additional rules and regulations. 3, exercise appellate jurisdiction over the decisions and orders of the building official. 4, evaluate, review, approve, and or take final action on changes and or amendments. 5, prescribe and impose the amount of fees and other charges as may be deemed necessary that the building official shall collect in connection with the performance of regulatory functions. And last, it was not written there, however, it was in the IRR, which is the sorry, which is the implemented rules and regulations of the NBCP. So, which is appoint a building official separate and distinct from the office of the city or municipal. So these are the general powers and functions of the secretary. So next, we have section 204, professional and technical assistance. So in professional technical assistance, the secretaries, they are given the chance, or they may acquire help, help such as professional, technical, scientific, and other services, including testing laboratories and facilities from other agencies of the national government when deemed necessary. So the secretaries may ask for help or assistance in uh, in such topics. So when they need something for projects, they may go to a professional help or technical service from the national government. Next is section 205, building officials. So except as otherwise provided herein, the building official shall be responsible for out wait lang, for carrying out the provisions of the code in the field, as well as the enforcement of orders and decision made pursuant thereto. All building officials appointed or designated other than by the secretary shall continue to act as the building official until such time that the secretary appoints the building official. Offices of the building officials already established, separate and distinct from the office of the city or municipal engineers in cities, may continue to exist until such time that a regular office is created. So, this is something like of a temporary kind of office. However, they may be promoted to a more secure and official position when such regular office is created. So next is section 206, qualifications of building officials. So here we have four. One is a Filipino citizen and of good moral character. Two, a duly registered architect or civil engineer. Three, a member of good standing of a duly accredited organization of his profession for not less than 5 years endorsed or recommended by the accredited professional organization. And four, has at least 5 years of diversified and professional experience in building design and construction. However, there was another item required, which is has attended and successfully completed a seminar workshop on PD 1096 and its IRR conducted by the DPWH. So not only does the person may be qualified to join having those four qualities, but also that person must have attended and successfully completed a seminar. Since we all know how important it is to understand fully the PD 1096, which is the National Building Code. So section 207 Section 207, duties of the building official. So here I can summarize it in seven statements. So one is be primarily responsible for the enforcement of the provision of the code. Two is have overall administrative control and or supervision over all works pertinent to building structures in his area of responsibility. Three, ensure that all changes, modifications, and alterations in the design plans during construction phase shall not start until the modified design plan has been evaluated and the necessary mandatory permit is issued. 4. Undertake annual inspections of all buildings or structures and keep an up-to-date record of their status. 5. Upon complaint or motu proprio and after due notice of hearing, initiate action. And 6. Submit a quarterly situational report to the Secretary through the MBCDO on the status of all existing building, on all existing or ongoing and proposed public as well as private building structures activities. And last is undertake such other duties and tasks as may be assigned by the secretary from time to time. So these seven are the duties, the summary duties of the building officials. So section 208, which are the fees. So in the fees, the secretary, through memorandum circulars, shall prescribe the rates of fees and formulate guidelines in the imposition and collection of fees. Subject to existing budgetary, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations, the building official shall retain not more than 20% of his income or collection derived from the permit fees and other charges for the operating expenses of his office. Every building official shall keep a permanent record and accurate account of all fees and other charges fixed and authorized to be collected and received. Next is section 209, which is exemption. So, public buildings and traditional indigenous family dwellings shall be exempt from payment of building permit fees. So, public buildings and again, public buildings and traditional indigenous family, as used in the code, the term traditional indigenous family dwelling means a dwelling intended for the use and occupancy by the family, by the owner only, and constructed of native materials. So when you say native materials, they are bamboo, nipa, logs, or lumber, and the total cost of which does not exceed 15,000 pesos. So these buildings or these dwellings shall be exempt from paying if they do not exceed 15,000 pesos. Section 210, use of income fees. We have recording of one is recording of collection. So first you have to record the collection, and then two is disposition of collection. After you recollect, you have to dispose, and the next is so in distribution of validated remittances and advices and deposit slip of 20% collection through any authorized government depository bank shall be accordance with COA Circular 2001-004. So here, so if we have to distribute any remittance, it should be original to be retained by the bank, the duplicate to be submitted to the local treasurer, the triplicate to be retained by the bank for submission, the quadruplicate to be returned to the local treasurer, and quintuplicate to be returned to the local treasurer for submission to the field or local auditor. So next is section 211, which is implementing rules and regulation. So in the implementation of the provisions of the code, the secretary shall formulate necessary rules and regulations and adopt design and construction standards and criteria for buildings and other structures. Such standards, rules, and regulations shall take effect after their publication once a week for 3 consecutive weeks in the newspaper of general circulation. And then next is section 212, administrative fines. So in administrative fines, there is imposition of administrative fines. So in imposition, the secretary or his duly authorized representative may prescribe and impose fines not exceeding 10,000 pesos. And then next is determination of amount of fines. So in determination of amount of fines, violations shall be classified as follows. So we have light violations, we have less grave violations, and last is grave violations. So those three are the basis for amount of fines. Next is penalty. So in penalty, we have without prejudice to the provisions of the preceding sections, the building official is hereby also authorized to impose a penalty or surcharge in the following cases in such amount and in the manner as hereunder fixed and determined. So there are penalty for excavation for a foundation, which is 10% of the building fees, Construction of foundation, 25%. Construction of superstructure up to 2 meters above established grade, 50%. And construction of superstructure above 2 meters, which is 100%. Next is Section 213, penal provisions. So, it shall be unlawful for any person, firm, or corporation to erect, construct, enlarge, alter, repair, move, improve, remove, convert, demolish, equip, use, occupy, or maintain any building or structure or cause the same to be done contrary to or in violation of the provision of the code. So, it is stated we cannot do anything to a building not unless we go through the proper process, or else uh, we will be penalty, such penalties like the ones that I have said before. So next is section 214, dangerous and ruinous buildings or structures. Dangerous buildings are those which are herein declared as such, or are structurally or unsafe, or not provided with safe egress, or which constitute as a fire hazard. So any kind of buildings that are clearly unsafe, fire hazard, they cannot be dangerous to human life. They Those buildings contribute to the pollution of the site or the community to an intolerable degree. So those buildings are automatically declared unsafe. Next is abatement of dangerous buildings. So when we have those buildings, those fire hazard buildings, those clearly unsafe for human life, is found or declared, the building official to is ordered to repair, vacation, or demolition depending upon the degree of danger to life, health, or security. So those buildings are evaluated to see if they are fit for repair, or they should be condemned automatically and just demolished. And last is other remedies. So in other remedies, the rights, actions, and remedies provided in this code shall be in addition to any and all other rights of action and remedies that they may be available under existing laws. And those are the 16 sections for Rule 2, which is administration and enforcement. Next, we have Dom Soriano for section 300.
We are proceeding to the next rule or the next chapter. We have the rule number 3, which entitled permits and inspection. So section 301, which is the building permits. So as we have heard, as we have heard from the previous reporters, they have already mentioned some of the content here in rule number 3, which is the definition of the building official, as mentioned by Stephanie, and the penalty and exemption, like for example, the exemption and penalty also that is mentioned by Ms. Auron. So I'm going to elaborate some of the specific structures that are, for example, the exemption. What kind of structures, or what are the specific structures that are exempted to any building permit? So section 301, building permit. No person, firm, or corporation, no person, firm, or corporation, including any agency or instrumentality of the government, shall construct, alter, repair, convert, use, occupy, move, demolish, and add any building or structure or any portion thereof, or cause the same to be done, without first obtaining a building permit thereof from the building official, assigned in the place where the subject building or structure is located or to be done. The prescribed application for building permit form is by the way, the specific form that is used for building permit or applying building permit is the NBC form B B-01. Later, I will present it to you. So this is the NBC form B-01. We are going to apply the requirements in building permit using this form. So permits supplementary to building permit shall be applied for and issued by the building official. So this includes ancillary and accessory permits. So there are two parts that we have to consider in applying building permit also. So there is an importance between these two because they must be accompanied by or should I say the building permit should be accompanied by these two parts of permit. So what are these two parts of permit? First is the ancillary permit. Ancillary permits duly signed and sealed by the corresponding professionals, and the plans and specifications shall be submitted together with the duly notarized application for building permit. So the building permit is null. Remember that the building permit is null and void if not accompanied by the ancillary permits. The prescribed ancillary and other accessory permits or forms shall likewise be used whenever applicable. So these are the following lists are the documents that are the following permits that we need to consider in ancillary permits. So first is the architectural permit, the documents inside the civil or structural permit, which as civil engineering considers. Next is the electrical permit, mechanical permit, sanitary permit, plumbing permit, and electronics permit. This is what I've said a while ago, that building permit is null and void if not accompanied by the ancillary permit. Plans and specifications be submitted together with notarized application. Remember that we need to notarize it first by the lawyer. Next is the accessory permits. What are the contents of accessory permits? Accessory permits are issued by the building official for accessory parts of the project with very special functions or use which are indicated in the plans and specifications that accompany the building permit application. These may include, among others, such as bank and records, vaults, swimming pools, firewalls separate from the building or structure, towers, silos, smokestacks, chimneys, commercial or industrial fixed ovens, industrial kilns or furnaces, water or waste treatment tanks, septic vaults, concrete and steel tanks, booths, kiosks and stages, tombs, mausoleums, and niches. Next is accessory permits are issued by the building official for activities being undertaken prior to or during the processing of the building permit. The coverage is spelled out in accessory permit from including the expiry period. This shall be signed by the concerned owner or applicant and by the concerned professionals. So remember that the accessory permits or the building permit itself together with these two parts must be applied by either the applicant is either the concerned professionals or the owner of the uh, structure to be uh, implemented. So these are the accessory permits. These are the contents of accessory permits. The ground preparation and excavation, the encroachment of foundation, the fencing, sidewalk construction, sidewalk enclosure and occupancy, erection of the scaffolding, erection itself, the repair, removal of signs, and the demolition. So remember that the accessory permits, these are the activities that the concerned professionals involved in the construction, they are doing this while applying the building permit at the same time. So those activities that the concerned professionals are doing are what we call the accessory permits. Proceeding to exemption from building permits, this is mentioned by Ms. Auron a while ago. So a building permit shall not be required for the following minor constructions and repairs provided this shall not violate any provision of the code and this IRR. So there are two parts of exemption from building permits. These are the minor constructions and the repair works. So what are the content of the minor constructions? So these are the specific structures that are exempted from building permits. If remember that these shall not violate any provision of the code and this IRR. So first is the sheds, next is the outhouses, next is the greenhouses, children's playhouses, aviaries, poultry houses, or tangkal, and the like. But remember that this must not exceed 6 square meters in total area. Remember, this must not exceed 6 square meters in total floor area, provided they are completely detached from any other building and are intended only for the private use of the owner. Again, intended only for the private use of the owner. There must no other, for example, there must no transactions that are involved. Proceeding to the next part is the in any other structures that are exempted from the building permit are also terraces and patios, the window grills or uh, installation of window grills, the garden pools for plants, garden masonry walls, footpaths, and residential garden walks or driveway. So the next is the repair works. Repair works not affecting or involving any structural member such as replacement of deteriorated roofing sheets or tiles, gutters, downspouts, fascias, ceilings, and or sidings. Repair and or replacement also of non-load bearing partition walls. Repair and or replacement of any interior portion or a house not involving addition or alteration. Repair and or replacement work of doors and windows. Repair and or replacement work of flooring. Repair of perimeter fence and walls. And last is the repair and or replacement of plumbing fixtures, fittings or pipings such as toilet bowls, sinks, lavatories, urinals, bidets, pipes, faucets, bulbs for single detached dwellings and duplexes. So the next section is the section 302, which is the application for permits. So what is the process for applying the permit? So any person desiring to obtain a building permit and any ancillary or accessory permits together with a building permit shall file application or applications therefore on the prescribed application forms. Remember the prescribed application form. Together with the accomplished prescribed application forms, the following shall be submitted to the OBO or the office of the building official that is mentioned also by Steve earlier. In case the applicant is the registered owner of the lot. So there are two kinds of applicant here. So first is the applicant is the registered owner of the lot. The next one is the registered owner of the lot, and at the same time, in addition to the above, duly notarized copy of contract, lease, or deed of absolute sale. So first, if the applicant is the registered owner of the lot, he or she must have the copy or the certified true copy of OCT or the original certificate of title and the TCT or TCT transfer certificate of title, the tax declaration and current real property tax receipt. So in case the applicant is not the registered owner of the lot, which is the second type of applicant, in case the applicant is not the registered owner of the lot, in addition to the above, so including the above mentioned or the mentioned in the first applicant, added to that is the contract of lease or deed of absolute sale. So those are the two types of applicant in building permit. 5 sets of survey plans, design plans, specifications, and other documents prepared, signed, and sealed over the printed names of the duly licensed and registered professionals. So later I will discuss who are the registered professionals that are involved in applying building permit or passing the uh, requirements or the following documents that are to be mentioned later. 5 sets of survey plans are the survey plans, design plans, specifications, and other documents. So these are the registered professionals involved. First is the geodetic engineer. Next is the architect. The third one is the civil engineer. Next is the electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, sanitary engineer, master plumber, and the electronic engineer. So what are the following documents that they are responsible to pass? So first, the geodetic engineer, in case of lot survey plans, they are responsible for the lot survey plans. The architect are, in case of architectural documents, they are responsible in architectural interior design documents. Either an architect or interior designer may sign. Again, either an architect or interior designer may sign. The next one is a civil engineer. We are responsible of the civil or structural documents to be passed together with the building in applying the building permit. The next is the electrical engineer, responsible for the electrical documents, mechanical engineer, the mechanical documents, sanitary for sanitary documents, master plumber in case of plumbing documents, and lastly, the electronics engineer in case of electronic documents. Going further, first, the architectural documents. What are the architectural documents or architectural plans or drawings? So first is the vicinity map or location plan within 2 kilometer radius for commercial, industrial, and institutional complex, and with a half-kilometer radius for residential buildings at any convenient scale showing prominent landmarks or major thoroughfares for easy reference. Site development plan showing technical description, boundaries, orientation, and position of proposed building or structure in relation to the lot, existing or proposed access road and driveways, and existing public utilities or services. Existing buildings within and adjoining the lot shall be hatched, and distances between the proposed and existing buildings shall be indicated. And next, we are also familiar with this, the perspective, drawn at a convenient scale and taken from a vantage point or the bird's eye view or eye level. Next is the floor plans, which we are also familiar. Drawn to scale of not less than 1:100, showing grid lines, complete identification of rooms or functional spaces. And next is the elevations. At least 4 same scale as floor plan showing grid lines, natural ground to finish grade elevations, floor to floor heights, door and window marks, type of material and exterior finishes, adjoining existing structures if any shown in single hatch lines. Next is the sections. At least 2 showing grade lines again, natural ground and finished lines, outline of cut and visible structural parts, doors and windows properly labeled, reflecting the direction of opening, partitions, built-in cabinets, and etc. Lastly is the reflected ceiling plan, showing design, location, finishes, and specifications of materials, lighting fixtures, diffusers, decorations, air conditioning, exhaust, and return grill, sprinkler, nozzles, if any, at scale at least 1:100. Okay, next is the also included are the details or plans, elevations, and the sections, and the schedule of doors and windows. And next is the schedule of finishes and the details of other major elements. So the architectural or the architecture rather or the interior designer are responsible in passing these documents, the following documents that are mentioned. So next is the architectural interior design. So this time the interior design is involved. So first is the space plans or layouts of architectural interiors. Next is the architectural interior perspective, furniture process layouts, access plans and parking plans, major architectural interior elements, plan and layout of interior wall elevations, the patterns and finishing details. Also included are list of materials used, and lastly, the cost estimates. So this is the standard form. It may not be clear in the screen, but uh, we'll try to zoom it. So before we graduate in this field, we have already uh, studied the standards of the plate, right? So this is the standard, and I think we are familiar already with this arrangement. So much to that. Proceeding to the civil or the structural documents. So since we are civil engineering, we are familiar of the following lists. So first is the site development plan, showing technical description, boundaries, orientation, and position of proposed non-architectural horizontal structures such as sewage treatment plant or the STP, silos, elevated tanks, towers, fences, and etc. So the building or structure in relation to the lot, existing or proposed access road and driveways and existing public utilities or service. Existing buildings within and adjoining the lot shall be hatched, and distances between the proposed and existing buildings shall be indicated. Next is the structural plans, which is one of the most uh, hectic or one of the most crucial part, including the structural analysis. So first is the foundation plans and details at scale of not less than 1:100. The floor or roof framing plans and details at scale of not less than 1:100. The detail and schedules of structural and civil works elements, including those for deep wells, water reservoir, pipelines, and sewer system. So the next one is the structural analysis and design for all buildings or structures except for one-story and single detached building or structure with a total floor area of 20 square meters or less. Boring and load test buildings or structures 3 stories and higher. Boring test and if necessary load test shall be required in accordance with the applicable latest approved provisions of the National Structural Code of the Philippines or the NSCP. However, adequate soil exploration, including boring and load tests, shall also be required for lower buildings or structures at areas with potential geological or geotechnical hazards. So the next is the seismic analysis, which involves seismic forms or the effects of earthquakes. So we are going to we civil engineer analyzes the seismic form that is being involved in the structure. So next is the other related documents at the same time. So the next documents are the electrical documents. So electrical documents are the following: electrical plans and technical specifications containing location and site plans, the legend or symbols, the general notes and or specifications, the electrical layout, the schedules, design, analysis, or the one, and the next is the one line diagram. Next is the mechanical documents. First is the location plan and key plan, the general layout plan, longitudinal and transverse sections, the isometric drawing of gas, fuel, and oil system, location of storerooms, ductwork installations, detailed plans of machinery, foundations. They are also responsible for the following documents: the plans of boilers and pressure vessels, plans of elevators and escalators, installations involving machinery, plans of fire suppression systems. Next is the sanitary documents that are to be passed by the sanitary engineers. First is the water purification, water collection and distribution systems, the reservoirs, drainage and sewer systems, sewage treatment plants, malaria control structures, sewage disposal systems. Next is the pest and vermin control, the sanitation itself, the pollution control facilities. Next documents are also include following documents are also included in the sanitary documents: the detailed plan, layout, and drawing of abatement, the design analysis and technical specifications, and lastly, its cost estimates. Next is the plumbing documents that are responsible. The master plumber are responsible to this. So first are the plumbing installations, addition and alterations involving hot and cold water supply fixtures, sewage drainage and vent system, storm drainage and sewage system, and documents are the following: the location plan and site plan, the plumbing plans, layout and details, the legend and general notes, isometric drawing of the systems, design analysis and technical specifications, and lastly, the cost estimates. And the last documents that are part of the building permit to be passed are the electronic documents. First is the electronic plans and technical specifications, the broadcasting systems, the TV broadcast equipment, the cable or wireless TV systems, the IT systems, the security and alarm systems, electronic fire alarm systems, sound reinforcement systems, navigational aids and controls, indoor and outdoor signages, electronically controlled conveyance systems, electronic or computerized process controls and automations, public or building automation, management and control systems. The documents are the general layout plans with those following uh, bullet uh, bullet terms. Next is the documents are the general layout plans with legends, the single line diagram, the riser diagram, isometry of the systems, equipment of specifications, design analysis, and lastly, the cost estimates. So here is also responsible for the mostly the lot survey plans. They are the geodetic engineers. So the documents they are going to pass are the geodetic documents. So first is the vicinity map or location plan of the structure to be implemented, the lot plan, the relocation survey plan and report, the line and grade, the detailed topographic plan. So how about the clearances from other agencies? So what are the clearances that we are going to consider? So later I will mention the following agencies that are also involved in applying building permit. So a locational clearance shall be obtained by the owner or permittee from the city or municipal zoning administration. Whenever necessary, written clearances shall be obtained from the various authorities exercising and enforcing regulatory functions affecting buildings or structures. Application for said clearances shall be requested by the owner applicant, and failure to receive reply within 7 days from receipt of the application for building permit shall be sufficient not to cause further delay in processing the building permit application by the building official. So the following are the authorities who are expected to enforce their own regulations are they are the first is the DPWH or the Department of Health, the Air Transportation Office or the ATO. The next is the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board, and the Local Government Unit or the LGU, Department of Tourism or DOT, Department of Environmental and Natural Resources or DENR, the Department of Transportation and Communication or the DOTC, Department of Interior and Local Government, DILG, Philippine Ports Authority, Department of Education also, or the DepEd, Department of Health, or the DOH, Philippine Institute of Volcanology, and seismology or the FIBOX, Laguna Lake Development Authority, the Manila Water Works and Sewerage Systems, National Water Resources Board, Department of Agrarian Reform, Department of Agriculture, Department of Labor and Employment, National Housing Authority, and lastly, the National Council for the Welfare of Disabled Persons. So proceeding to Section 303, the processing of building permits. So if we are confused, what is the real process of the applying building permits? So the flow processing of building permits shall follow the procedure shown in the figure. Uh, in the figure. The building permit application, when satisfied that all plans, specifications, and other documents are in order, the building official gives due course to the application. So the OBO verifies conformity of the proposed buildings or structures with the land use zoning ordinance of the city or municipality. If the project has been issued a development permit such as residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, memorial parks, and other development by the HLURB or the Sangguniang Bayan or Panglungsod, an individual locational clearance shall not be required. So the building official verifies whether applicants have secured the required section clearances from other agencies mentioned in the preceding section. Remember that the uh, following agencies that are mentioned a while ago, they are responsible to enforce the building permit to be applied in the building official. So the owner or permittee for any existing buildings or structure that shall undergo alterations, additions, conversions, renovations, and or repair not covered by Section 303 of this IRR shall submit, in addition to other documents, the most recent certificate of occupancy when applying for a building permit. So remember that the certificate of occupancy is one main important also in applying the building permit. Later in the section, I think it's in the rule number 5 or the chapter 5, they are going to, there is to be mentioned that is one important thing. That is why the office of the building official always consider the certificate of occupancy. The line and grade verification. So the line and grade section or unit of the OBO verifies the lot plan as reflected in the Torrens title, original certificate of title, or the OCT, the transfer certificate of the title and its relation to the proposed buildings or structures. So these are also the professionals in the these are also the concerned professionals that are going to evaluate the documents that we have passed while applying the building permit. So they are the architecture, the geodetic engineer, civil engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical, sanitary, master plumber, and electronic engineer. So proceeding to the fire safety requirements. What are the fire safety requirements that are involved here? Wait lang ah. So the fire safety requirements or the building official shall refer one set of plans and specifications to the city or municipal fire marshal, Bureau of Fire Protection, or the BFP for his review and recommendations with respect to fire safety and control requirements. So this one main important also in applying building permit or the fire safety requirements. This is much more elaborated later in chapter 5. So the C or the MFM shall submit his report and recommendations to the building official within 5 working days from date of referral. So the next section is the issuance of building permit. How is it being issued? When the application for building permit and the plans and the specifications submitted here with conforms to the requirements of the code and its IRR, the building official shall within 15 days from payment of the required fees by the applicant issue the building permit applied for. So the building official issue a ground preparation and excavation permit. After that, and the next is the applicant post a cash bond that is cash bond of 50,000 pesos for the first 50 cubic meters and 300 pesos for every cubic meters in excess of 50 cubic meters until the building permit is issued. Said excavation shall not exceed 100 cubic meters or 3 meters in depth and shall not be left open without any work being done in the site for more than 120 days. Otherwise, the cash bond shall be forfeited in favor of the government to cover the expenses for the backfilling of the excavation should the owner or permittee fail to restore the same. So this is one main very crucial part in estimation. If we once we have already studied the cost estimation as a civil engineer, we have already read or we're going to study the payments that are involved in permits, and excavation are part of that. So the terms and conditions of the permits. The issued building permit shall be subject to the following terms and conditions that under Article 1723 of the Civil Code of the Philippines, the engineer or architect who drew up the plans and specifications for a building or structure is liable for damages. Remember, we are liable for damages if within 15 years from the completion of the building or structure, the same should collapse due to defect in the plans or specifications or defects in the ground. The engineer or architect who supervises the construction shall be solidarily liable with the contractor should be edifice collapse due to defect in construction or the use of inferior materials. So these permits shall be accompanied by the various applicable ancillary and accessory permits, plans, and specifications signed and sealed by the corresponding design professionals who shall be responsible. Remember that every professional who signed the following documents that we have already mentioned a while ago, once we have signed those following documents, we are already liable to that in case there is an issue or there is a damages that are going to appear in the structure. We are responsible for the comprehensive and correctness of the plans in compliance to the code and its IRR and to all applicable referral codes and professional regulatory laws. So proceeding to section 305, the validity of building permits. The issuance of a building permit shall not be constructed as an approval or authorization to the permittee to disregard or violate any of the provisions of the code. Whenever the issuance of a permit is based on approved plans and specifications which are subsequently found defective, the building official is not precluded from requiring permittee to effect the necessary corrections in said plans and specifications, or from preventing or ordering the stoppage of any or all building operations being carried on thereunder which are in violation of the code. A building permit issued under the provisions of the code shall expire and become null and void if the building or work authorized therein is not commenced within a period of 1 year after the issuance of the building permit. So the building permit will soon expire if the project itself that is being implemented or the applied by the building permit shall expire after 1 year if the project is not yet done or it is suspended or abandoned at any time after it has been commenced for a period of 120 days. So the office of the building officials also are responsible in that is why we have observed in some of the projects, the office of the building official, they are having a regular maintenance or they are, what do you call that? They are having a, basta the word is maintenance or they are going to check what is the progress of the project. So proceeding to Section 306 or the non-issuance, suspension, or revocation of building permits, the building official may order or cause the non-issuance, suspension, or revocation of building permits on any or all of the following reasons or grounds. Those following reasons or grounds are the errors found in the plans and specifications, so they cannot be issued a building permit or they cannot be uh, accepted. If there is an error found in the plans and specifications, it will be in the term of political jargon, it can be vetoed. So next is the incorrect or inaccurate data or information supplied. If there is an incorrect or inaccurate data on the information supplied. And lastly, the non-compliance with the provisions of the code or any rules or regulations. So there is a non-issuance or there is a suspension of building permits if those following that things or mentioned are or appear in the application. So next is the section 307 or the appeal that is also mentioned. I think it was also mentioned by Miss Auron. With 15 days from date of receipt of advice of the non-issuance, suspension, or revocation of permits, the applicant or permittee may file an appeal with the secretary who shall render his decision within 15 days from date of receipt of notice of appeal. Remember, only 15 days. The decision of the secretary shall be final, subject only to review by the office of the president. So that is the process of appealing. So next is the section 308 or the inspection of supervision of work. The owner of the building who is issued or granted a building permit under the code shall engage the services of duly licensed architect or civil engineer to undertake the full-time inspection and the supervision of the construction work. So there is a term, the inspection. So again, the office of the building official, they are going to have a regular inspection or maintenance so that they can identify if the following project is already abandoned or suspended. So that is why it is very crucial. Next is the such architect or civil engineer may or may not be the same architect or civil engineer who is responsible for the design of the building. So it is understood, however, that in either case, the designing architect or civil engineer is not precluded from conducting inspection of the construction work to check and determine compliance with the plans and specifications of the building submitted. There shall be also kept at the job site at all times a logbook wherein the actual progress of construction, including tests conducted. So we are already familiar with this together with the cost estimates, the S-curve or the Gantt chart, and there are any other terms that we consider as the logbook. So weather conditions and other pertinent data are to be recorded. So next is the upon completion of the construction, the said licensed architect or civil engineer shall submit the logbook duly signed and sealed to the building official. He shall also prepare and submit a certificate of completion of the project stating that the construction of the building conforms to the provision of the code as well as with approved plans and specifications. So last section in the chapter 3 is the certificate of occupancy. So what is a certificate of occupancy that is mentioned a while ago? So the owner of permittee shall submit to the OBO or the office of the building official an application of certificate of occupancy. Later in chapter 5, we are going to elaborate some of the main reasons why we have to pass a certificate of occupancy. So together with a duly notarized certificate of completion together with the construction logbook as built plans and specifications and the building inspection sheet all signed by whoever is the contractor if construction is undertaken by contract and signed and sealed by the owner's duly licensed architect or civil engineer who undertook the full-time inspection and supervision of the construction works. Said plans and specifications shall reflect faithfully all changes, modifications, and alterations made on the original submitted plans and specifications on file with the OBO, which are the basis of the issuance of the original building permit. So a notification to conduct final inspection shall be endorsed by the OBO also to the C or the MFM or the BFP, who shall issue a fire safety inspection certificate within 5 working days if the fire safety requirement shall have been complied. So remember, uh, the fire safety inspection or the fire safety requirement. So the chapter 5 is the elaboration of fire safety requirement. So this shall be issued within 5 working days by the C or the MFM or the VFP that that were endorsed by the office of the building official. So if after the prescribed period no action is taken by the C or MFM, the building official may issue the certificate of occupancy with the condition that the fire safety requirement shall be complied with within the prescribed period set forth in the Fire Code of the Philippines. So next is the OBO undertakes the final inspection. So the office of the building official, they are going to undertake the final inspection, verification, and or review of the building or structure based on the certificate of completion, construction logbook, the building inspection sheets, original and as-built plans and specifications, as the case may be, and specifications in the prescribed standard form according to the requirements set forth under Section 303. So next is the prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So how to finally issue the certificate of occupancy. The OBO shall prepare the corresponding fees and order of payment. The building official then issues the certificate of occupancy in the form prescribed therefore after all fees are paid. Again, it shall be issued if the form or prescribed therefore after all fees are paid by the applicant. A partial certificate of occupancy may be issued for the use or occupancy of a portion or portions of a building or structure prior to the completion to the entire building or structure, though the proper pacing of its major independent portions without posing hazards to its occupants, the adjacent building residents, and general public. So the last is a building for which a certificate of occupancy has been issued may further be issued other certificates of occupancy due to changes in use, whether partly or wholly, provided that the new use or uses or characters of occupancy conforms with the requirement of the code and its IRR. So the next reporter is the Stephanie Magno, I think, the rule 4.
To continue, to continue the code, use chapter 4, types of construction. For the type 1, shall be wood construction. The structural elements may be any of the materials permitted by the code. So type 2 shall be of wood construction with protective fire-resistant materials and one are fire-resistive throughout, except the permanent non-bearing partitions may use fire-retardant treated wood within the framing assembly with 1 R resistivity. Type 3 shall be of masonry and wood construction. Structural elements may be any of the materials permitted by the code, provided that the building shall be 1 R fire resistive throughout. Exterior walls shall be incombustible fire resistive construction. So for the type 3, the building or structure is combination of masonry and wood construction. So for type 4, shall be steel, iron, concrete, or masonry construction, and walls, ceiling, and permanent partitions shall be of incombustible fire-resistive construction, except that permanent non-bearing partitions of 1 R fire-resistive construction may use fire-retardant treated wood within framing assembly. Type 5 shall be 4 R fire resistive throughout, and the structural elements shall be steel, iron, concrete, or masonry construction. So for masonry construction, the examples for that are the concrete hollow blocks and the autoclave aerated concrete blocks or AAC blocks. So here's the illustrative of the partition wall non-bearing. So for the partition non-wall bearing is this wall here, the wall, since the bearing wall consists of a load. Then here's an example of a wood framing, which is stated here. Treated wood framing, wood within the framing assembly. So this is a wood framing assembly. So for the next rule, here's for the rule, section 402, changes in types. No change shall be made in the type of construction of any building which would place the building in different subtype or type of construction, unless such building is made to comply with the requirements for such subtype of construction, except when the changes is approved by the building official upon showing that the new or proposed construction is less hazardous based on life and fire risk than the existing construction. So for this section 402, um, the building official will approve the proposed construction if, example, you have the original building you have is type 1. Then next you propose a construction that is in type 4 or type 5. So there's a possibility that the building official will approve the proposal since it is less hazardous than the existing construction. So section 403, requirements on type of construction. 1. Fire resistive requirements. So for A, exterior bearing and non-bearing walls of types 2 and 3 constructions shall have 1R fire resistive rating, while those type 4 and 5 shall have 4R fire resistive rating. So B, interior bearing walls, permanent partitions, floors, and roofs of type 2, 3, 4 construction shall have 1R fire resistive rating, while those of type 5 shall have 3R fire resistive rating for bearing walls and 1R fire resistive rating for vertical openings, floors, and roofs. C. Structural frames of types 2 and 3 construction shall have 1R fire resistive rating, while those of type 4 shall have 2R fire resistive rating, and those of type 5 shall have 3R fire resistive rating. And for the exterior doors and windows of a certain structure or building, it should have 1R fire resistive rating for all types. So these requirements um, are always required for the construction of a building or structure. So for the interior wall and ceiling finishes, um, I just summarized it. This section 403, interior wall and ceiling finishes. The finishes of interior walls and ceilings should undergo a test in accordance to the tunnel test, and it should have a requirements. So the stated in letter B, requirements for flame spread characteristics of finishes shall not apply to frames or trim doors and windows and to materials which is less than 1 millimeter in thickness cemented to the surface wall and ceiling. So, um, the flame retardant having flame spread of 50 or less determined by tunnel test. So here, everything here under requirements of type construction should be conducted through testing, which is tunnel test, and those tests will show the capability of your materials that are to be used in your building or structures. So third, standards for materials used in structural frameworks exterior walls and opening floors, exits, stairs, and roofs shall be governed by the pertinent provision of the Fire Code of the Philippines. So, in Chapter 4, Types of Construction, we need to consider the Fire Code of the Philippines, in which it will be discussed by the next reporter for the Rule 5, Mr. Dominador Soriano.
Thank you. So proceeding to Rule 5 or the Chapter 5. So the Rule 5 or the Chapter 5 is the requirements of the fire zones. So the zones are areas, there are areas within which only certain types of buildings or structures are permitted to be constructed based on their use or occupancy, type of construction, and resistance to fire. So the fire zones are again, those are the areas that are not so permitted by the office of the building official to implement a project structure, maybe because of their hazards to the occupancy of the project. So section 502, so now as the section 501 or the fire zones, definition of the fire zones. The section 502, which is the building located in more than one fire zone. So what are the buildings located in more than one fire zones? First is it located in one fire zone. Next is the located in one and partly in another fire zone. So the last is the more than one third of area is located in the zone. So a building or structure which is located partly in one fire zone and partly in another shall be considered to be in the more highly restricted fire zone, when more than one third of its total floor area is located in such zone. So Section 503 is the moved building. So any buildings or structure moved within or into any fire zone shall be made to comply with all the requirements for buildings or structures in that fire zone. And this shall also apply to pre-engineered or pre-fabricated buildings or structures that may be dismantled and reassembled. So Section 504 is the temporary buildings or structures. So temporary buildings such as reviewing stands and other miscellaneous structures conforming to the requirements of the code, and sheds, canopies, and fences used for the protection of the public around and in conjunction with construction work may be erected in the fire zones by special permit from the building official. That special permit that was mentioned is also uh, given by the building official for a limited period of time only, and such buildings or structures shall be completely removed upon the expiration of the time limit stated in such permits. Remember that those special permits that is issued by the building official and are given to us applicant, there is an expiration or the or time limit in such permits. So next is the erection of temporary buildings or structures to be located in restrictive and highly restrictive zones. So later we are going to discuss what are the restrictive zones and which do not conform with the type of construction allowed or permitted within such zones may be allowed by the building official for a given period of time, provided that fire protective or preventive measures and fire suppression facilities are adequate. So what is in Section 505? Section 505 is center lines of streets. So the center line of adjoining street or alley may be considered an adjacent property line. Distances shall be measured at right angles to the street or alley. So Section 506 is the restrictions on existing buildings. So what are the restrictions on existing buildings? Existing buildings are structures and fire zones that do not comply with the requirements for a new building erected therein shall not hereafter be enlarged, altered, remodeled, repaired, or moved except as follows. Such building is entirely demolished, such building is to be moved outside the limits of more highly restrictive fire zone to a zone where the building meets the minimum standards, and the changes, alterations, and repairs may be provided that in any 12-month period, the value of the work does not exceed 20% of the value of the existing building, and provided that such changes do not add additional combustible material and do not, in the opinion of the building official, increases the fire hazard. Additions also thereto are separated from the existing building by the firewalls, as set forth in section 506. The damage from fire or earthquake, typhoons, or any fortuitous event may be repaired using the same kind of materials of which the building or structure was originally constructed, provided that the cost of such repair shall not exceed 20% of the replacement cost of the building or structure. Again, the damage from fire or earthquake. So there are also specific events that are where the damages is considered by the office of the building official. So these are the earthquakes, typhoons, or any fortuitous event. So the OBO will only is the only officials that considers the damage. So in Section 507, the designation of fire zones, the legislative body of the LGU may enact ordinances for the purposes of designation or designating fire zones based on the parameters and guidelines set forth in this section. Designation of fire zones is purposely for management, prevention, control, and suppression or conflagration that may occur in population centers. So the designation of fire zones is as follows. So what are the fire zones? So first is the non-fire restrictive zones. These are areas where siting of buildings or structures are permitted without fire resistivity measures. Again, without fire resistivity measures, often located in the countrysides or rural areas where commercial, industrial, and other buildings are sparsely constructed, or may be clustered in small groups like farmlands wherein dwellings are built of indigenous materials such as bamboo, sawali, nipa, kugon, palm leaves, and wood. So next is the fire restricted zones. Areas wherein the siting of building structures are permitted within prescribed fire resistivity measures. For exterior walls, at least 2 are fire resistivity. Usual locations are in the suburban areas are permitted to be built with at least 1 hour fire resistivity throughout as types 2, 3, and 4 that is mentioned a while ago by Steve. So the highly fire restrictive areas or the highly fire restrictive zones or the last one are the areas wherein highly fire resistive or non-combustible buildings or structures and or construction assemblies of no less than 3 to 4 hour fire resistive construction materials are used throughout, including exterior walls. So these types are the types 4 and 5 constructions are permitted in the areas. So those are the fire resistive. Those are the designation of fire zones. Thank you.
So okay, let's start. So the under the PD 1096, the National Building Code of the Philippines, is the Chapter 6, which is the fire resistive requirements in construction. So the Section 601 is the fire resistive rating defined. Fire resistive rating means the degree to which a material can withstand fire as determined by generally recognized and accepted testing methods. This section 602 is the fire resistive time period rating. So the fire resistive time period rating is the length of time a material can withstand being burned, which may be 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, or etc. So the next section is the section 603, the fire resistive standards. So the fire resistive standards, all materials of construction and assemblies or combination thereof shall be classified according to their fire retardant or flame spread ratings as determined by general accepted testing methods and or by the secretary. So the next is all materials of construction and type of materials and assemblies or combination thereof shall conform to the following fire resistive ratings. So on the left side is the type of assembly and material. On the right side is the minimum thickness in millimeter for the given fire resistant. So as we can see, the following types of assembly and materials is the floor construction, and there is the solid RC slab. The next is the solid pre-stressed partitions, protection for metal structures, members, exterior wall, column in all faces exposed. On the right side, as we can see, is the minimum thickness given for fire resistance. Mm, So, next is the section 604, the fire resistive regulation. The secretary shall prescribe standards and promulgate rules and regulations on the testing of construction materials for flame spread characteristics. So, test on fire damages, fire test of building construction and materials, door assemblies and tinclad, fire doors and windows assemblies, the installation of fire doors and windows and smoke detectors for fire protective signaling system, application and use of controlled interior finish, fire resistive protection for structural members, fire resistive walls and partitions, fire resistive floor or roof ceiling, fire resistive assemblies for protection of openings, and fire retardant roofing coverings. So the next chapter is chapter 7, which is the classification and general requirement of all buildings by use of occupancy. So the section 701 is the occupancy classified. Occupancy classified: A is the buildings proposed for construction shall be identified according to their use or the characteristics of its occupancy and shall classified as follows. Number 1 is Group A, residential dwellings. So Group A occupancy shall be dwellings. The number 2 is the Group B belongs to residentials, hotels, and apartments. It shall be multiple dwellings units including boarding or lodging houses, hotels, apartment buildings, row houses, convents, monasteries, and other similar buildings, each of which accommodates more than 10 persons. So number 3 is the Group C belongs the education and recreation. So Group C occupancies shall be buildings used for school or daycare purposes, involving assemblage for instruction, education, or recreation, and not classified in Group 1 or in Division 1 and 2 or Group H occupancy. So the number 4 is the Group D, the institutional. So Group D occupancies shall include Division 1 mental hospitals, mental sanitaria, jails, prisons, reformatories, and buildings where personal liberties of inmates are similarly restrained. Division 2 belongs to nurseries for full-time care of children under kindergarten age, hospitals, sanitaria, nursing homes with non-ambulatory patients, and similar buildings each accommodating more than 5 persons. So, Division 3 belongs nursing homes for ambulatory patients, homes for children of kindergarten age or over, each accommodating more than 5 persons, provided that Group D occupancy shall not include buildings used only for private or family grouping dwelling purposes. So, number 5 is Group E, business and mercantile. Group E occupancy shall include Division 1 gasoline filling and service stations, storage garage and booth storage structures where no work is done except exchange of parts and maintenance requiring no open flame, welding, or the use of highly flammable liquids. Division 2 belongs wholesale and retail stores, office buildings, drinking and dining establishments having an occupant load of less than 100 persons, printing plants, police and fire stations, factories and workshops using not highly flammable or combustible materials, and paint stores without bulk handlings. So Division 3 is the aircraft hangars and open parking garage with no repair work is done except exchange of parts and maintenance requiring no open flame, welding, or the use of highly flammable liquids. So number 6 is the group F, belongs to the industrial group. The occupancies shall include ice plants, power plants, pumping plants, cold storage and creameries, factories and workshops using incombustible and non-explosive materials, and storage and sale rooms for incombustible and non-explosive materials. So number 7 is the group G, belongs to the storage and hazardous group. So it shall include Division 1, storage and handling of hazardous and highly flammable material. Division 2 is the storage and handling of flammable materials, dry cleaning plants using flammable liquids, paint stores with bulk handling, paint shops and spray painting rooms. Division 3, wood working establishments, planning mills and box factory shops, factories where loose combustible fibers or dust are manufactured, processed, or generated. Warehouses where highly combustible material is stored. Division number 4, repair garages. Division number 5, craft repair hangars. So number 8, Group H, belongs to assembly other than Group 1. Group H occupancies shall include Division 1, any assembly building with a stage and occupant load of less than 1,000 in the building. So the Division 2, any assembly building without stage and having an occupant load of 300 or more in the building. So Division 3 is the any assembly building without a stage and having an occupant load of less than 300 in the building. Division 4, stadia, reviewing stands, amusement park structures not included within Group 1 or in Division 1, 2, and 3 of this group. Number 9 is the Group I. Assembly occupant load 1,000 or more. Group 1 occupancies shall be any assembly building with an age and an occupant load of 1,000 or more in the building. Number 10 is Group J. Accessory Group J occupancies shall include Division 1, private garage, carports, sheds, and agriculture buildings. Division 2, fences over 1.8 meters high, tanks, and towers. So B is other subgroupings or division within Group A to J may be determined by the Secretary. Any other occupancy not mentioned specifically in the section or about which there is any question shall be included in group which it most nearly resembles based on the existing or proposed life and fire hazard. B. Other subgroupings or divisions within Group A to J may be determined by the Secretary. Any other occupancy not mentioned specifically in this section or about which there is any question shall be included in the group, which it most nearly resembles based on the existing or proposed life and fire hazard. So this section 702 is a change in use. No change shall be made in the character of occupancy or use of any building which would place the building in any different division of the same group of occupancy or in any different groups of occupancies, unless such building is made to comply with the requirements of this code for such division or group of occupancy. The character of occupancy of existing buildings may be changed subject to the approval of the building officials, and the building may be occupied for purposes set forth in other groups, provided the new proposed use is less hazardous based on life and fire risk than existing use. The Section 703 is the mixed occupancy. All openings in floors forming a 3R fire-resistive occupancy separation shall be protected by vertical enclosures extending above and below such openings. The walls of such vertical enclosure shall be of not less than 2R fire-resistive construction, and all openings therein shall be protected by a fire assembly having a 3R fire-resistive rating. All openings in floors forming a 3R fire-resistive occupancy separation shall be protected by a vertical enclosures extending above and below such openings. The walls such vertical enclosure shall be of not less than 2R fire-resistive construction, and all openings therein shall be protected by a fire assembly having a 3R fire-resistive rating. Number 4 is the 4R fire-resistive occupancy separation shall have no openings therein, and shall be of not less than 4 hours fire-resistive construction. Fire rating, D is the fire rating for occupancy separation. Occupancy separation shall be provided between groups, subgroupings, or division of occupancy. The Secretary shall promulgate rules and regulation for appropriate occupancy separation in buildings of mixed occupancy, provided that where any occupancy separation is required, the minimum shall be a 1-hour fire-resistive occupancy separation, and where the occupancy separation is horizontal, structural members supporting the separation shall be protected by an equivalent fire-resistive construction. So, general is the no building shall be constructed unless it adjoins or has direct access to a public space, yard, or street on at least one of its sides. For the purpose of this section, the center line of an adjoining street or alley shall be considered an adjacent property line. Eaves over required windows shall not be less than 750 millimeters from the side and rear property lines. B. Fire resistance of walls. Exterior walls shall have fire resistance and openings protection in accordance with the requirements set forth by the Secretary. So projection beyond the exterior wall shall not exceed beyond a point, a one-third the distance from an assumed vertical plane located where the fire-resistive protection of openings is first required to the location on property. Whichever is the least restrictive distance shall be measured at right angles from the property line. So when openings in exterior walls are required to be protected due to the distance from property line, the sum of the areas of such openings in any story shall not exceed 50% of the total area of the wall in the story. So C is the buildings on same property and buildings containing courts for the purpose of determining the required wall and opening protection. Buildings on the same property and courts walls shall be assumed to have a property line between them. When a new building is to be erected on the same property with an existing building, the assumed property line from the existing building shall be the distance to the property line for each occupancy as set forth by the Secretary, provided the two or more buildings on the same property may be considered as one building if the aggregate area of such building is within the limits of allowable floor areas for a single building, and when the buildings so considered house different occupancy or rare are of different types of construction, the area shall be the allowed for the most restrictive occupancy or construction. The Section 705 is the allowable floor areas. The allowable floor areas for one-story building and buildings over one story shall not exceed the limits prescribed by the Secretary for each occupancy group and/or types of construction. For purposes of this section, each portion of a building separation by one or more area separation walls may be considered as a separate building provided the area separation walls meet the requirements prescribed therefor by the Secretary. The Section 706 is the allowable floor area increases. The floor areas herein above provided by may be increased in certain specific instances and other appropriate conditions based on the existence of public space, streets or yards extending along and adjoining two or more sides of the building or structures subject to the approval of building officials. So the Section 707, the maximum height of buildings. The maximum height and number of stories of every building shall be dependent upon the character of occupancy and the type of construction as determined by the Secretary considering population density, building bulk, width of street and car parking requirements. The height shall be measured from the highest adjoining sidewalk or ground surface, provided that the height measured from the lowest adjoining surface shall not exceed such maximum height by more than 3 meters, except that towers, spires, and steeples erected as part of the building and not used for habitation or storage are limited as to height only by structural design if completely of incombustible material or may extend not exceed 6 meters above the height limits for each occupancy group if of combustible materials. So the Section 708 minimum requirements for Group A dwellings. A dwellings location and lot occupancy. The dwelling shall occupy not more than 90% of corner lot and 80% of an inside lot and subject to the provision of easement on light and view of the Civil Code of the Philippines shall be at least 2 meters from the property line. B. Light and ventilation. Every dwelling shall be so constructed and arranged as to provide adequate light and ventilation as provided under Section 805 of this code. C. Sanitation. Every dwelling shall be provided with at least one sanitary toilet and adequate washing and drainage facilities. So D is the foundation. Footing shall be of sufficient size and strength to support the load of the dwelling and shall be at least 250 millimeters thick and 600 millimeters below the surface of the ground. E. Post. The dimension of wooden post shall be those found in Table 708 A dimension of wooden post, Annex B-1. Each post shall be anchored to such footing by strap and bolts of adequate size. F is the floor. The live load of the floor shall be at least 200 kilograms per square meter and for the second floor at least 150 kilograms per square meter. So G, the roof. The wind load of a roof shall be at least 120 kilograms per square meter for vertical projection. H, stairs. The stairs shall be at least 750 millimeters in clear width with a rise of 200 millimeters and a minimum run of 200 millimeters. So the Section 708 minimum requirements for Group A dwellings. So I, entrance and exit. There shall be at least one entrance and another one for exit. J. Electrical requirements. All electrical installation shall conform to the requirements of the Philippine Electrical Code. K is the mechanical requirements. Mechanical system and/or equipment installation shall be subject to the requirements of the Philippine Mechanical Engineering Code. So the Section 709 requirements for other group occupancy is the Subject to the provision of this code, the Secretary shall promulgate rules and regulation for each of the other group occupancy coverings, allowable construction, height and area location, on property exit facilities, light, ventilation, and sanitation enclosures, of vertical openings, fire extinguishing systems, and special hazard. So, that's end of our slide. Thank you, and we hope that you learn something from our report. Thank you, and God bless all.